It is already a scary thing to remove yourself from an abusive relationship, but it's also a scary thing to the person that you are to actually be grieving that relationship. And I feel as though this is one of those things, or these are one of those situations where you don't really understand why people stay, or you don't really understand how someone could miss someone that treats them poorly. And it, like I said, it's definitely a situation that you had to encounter. For a while, I knew that my relationship was abusive, but I didn't connect or attach myself to that idea, because attaching myself to that idea made me, I had to confront so many other things that I had going on within myself. I had to confront my self identity, my self worth. I had to confront and reinforce boundaries, all those things that come with not being a people pleaser. And I'm going to be transparent as I can. I've begged for this, almost for this relationship back, for the sake of there being a child involved. I felt like if I could take up the slack of the other person, if I could fill the shoes of the other person, everything would be all right. But I realized that's something that I was doing my entire relationship. I don't know what I expected after the breakup for things to get better, but it definitely, it's hard to say if it got worse because the bad moments were so bad. It's almost as if it's expected. I remember having a conversation, and or not a conversation, a really bad argument, and everything that's happening today I brought up as a concern back then, and this was years ago. So it's hard to move on when you realize that you've seen the signs but you chose to ignore it. You were hearing from God but you chose to ignore it. You knew better but you chose to ignore it for the sake of, what if I leave this relationship, my child doesn't have a father? And that's what I've been coming to terms with me being a single mother, coming to terms with I never wanted kids in the first place. I did everything for the sake of, I have a man, he's here with me every day, and that was enough. Um, that is enough for a lot of young women, and honestly, less than. For me, having a man that was there with me every day was simply enough. And when I say that, those are the things I meant. I didn't require respect. I didn't require true love. I didn't require communication. I didn't require this person to change for me. Those are things that came later on down the line. And I realized that every single time, even though it was communicated to me that things were going to change or things were going to be better, it was just something to pull me back in. There were plenty of times where I felt that a lot of things that were violent was becoming normalized for the sake of, well, these are my emotions and you did A, B, C, D, E for me. So this is why I have to abuse you. And I definitely fell into that trap. I never had any positive male figures in my life. The only one I could think of was my uncle, but again, he wasn't really in my life. He's always stayed miles away. I may have seen that part of my family once a year, once every 2 years. And that's not enough to be sustainable enough to be a model to a young lady and what she should be expecting from a man. And as a woman, you can't teach a man how to be a man. I believe that a man has to teach a man how to be a man. And there's just, it's power in being able to grieve. And I realized that I've been going through a real grieving process. A lot of people don't talk about grieving outside of the physical death of someone. No, I'm grieving the idea that I married the love of my life, that the love of my life is there for my child every day, and that he is a father that is present in his life. I'm grieving all of that. I'm grieving my marriage. I'm grieving the relationship that I idolized in my head that was never really there. I'm grieving the woman that I was when that's the way I was treated was enough, or the way that I was treated was something that I could just get over, or something I could just continue to forgive. But that wasn't the case, and I was screaming out for help for years, screaming out for help for years. And a lot of times the people, that's why you have to put yourselves in environments where there are other people that love themselves so that they can reflect that love back onto you, because in situations like that, in abusive relationships, you tend to be isolated. Even if there was times where I would go hang out with my friends, it was always in the back of my mind, oh, this is not okay, or he's not okay with me hanging out with my friends. And this shouldn't be the case. It was definitely a lot of stepping on eggshells. I probably will go into detail about the actual abuse that took place, but there, I'm grieving. So I don't know, I know a lot of you are familiar with the grieving process. Sometimes you feel isolated. Sometimes you feel as though nobody can understand. And especially, I truly feel as though a lot of people around me don't understand what it's like to grieve an abusive, like a truly abusive relationship, physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. And I felt alone in a lot of this, because most people's reaction is be happy, move on. Shouldn't you just be glad that you're not in that relationship anymore? But it took me years to leave that relationship. It took me years of trying to break it off and break up, because my heart, my soul, everything in my being, God told me that that wasn't it for me. But I always had it in me that I could change people, or if I could just figure out a better way to communicate that I don't want to be abused, that it will happen. Or if I could cry enough, or if I could show them that I'm sad enough, or if I could yell loud enough, maybe he will finally get it. But that's not how things work. And for me, the biggest part is now my son no longer has the father that he had. And that breaks my heart, and it feels like I'm reliving my childhood because I didn't have my father, and it feels like I'm the one responsible because I knew the signs. Or it's a tough thing. And the loneliness comes when I felt like I've been there to listen to other people's problems and giving them incredible feedback. But even though I do have people to open up to it about, it's not coming up, it's coming from a place of, okay, I'm just listening. But really, I want to be heard and understood, and I would like the feedback that I give to others. And I feel as though I'm not in a position, or I'm not around the people that actually give me the feedback that I would. So it's forced me to go into the coping mechanisms of, you know what, just thug it out and handle your own. And it sucks, because now I feel as though I should hold myself back, the person that I am, as far as giving advice. And that shouldn't be the case. We should be able to be in positions where we are authentically us. One of the biggest things that hurt me is feeling like I made a child with someone who doesn't love them as much as I do. And that's something that's completely out of my control. But it's also something that I feel at fault at. And this is just a lot of things that have been circulating on top of my head the most. It's not easy to escape